Hello, everyone, and welcome to Voice Like a Lion podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Pemberton, and today I have a great opportunity to talk to the digital doc himself, Kirk. Kirk, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Excited to be here.
So, how did you get that moniker, the digital doc? I'm interested to hear the story.
Uh, like most things in life, it was a gift given to me by others. So those who work with me, they actually call me the conversion surgeon, Kirk Money, and most recently the digital doc. And it's because when we're in the matrix together, I obsess over data. I obsess over spreadsheets, understanding the customers. I'm always playing with like new tools, and eventually these nicknames started to come up, and I'm like, that's pretty cool. I think I'm going to keep these ones.
That's dope. I wish I had friends that would give me cool nicknames. I think that's really neat. So, when you talk about data, because I'm a very data driven guy myself, what kind of data are you looking at?
What I've learned, so I've been in marketing for about 14 years, and what I've learned is that nobody really cares about the data as much as you do. Number one.
Mm,
Number two, the way you present the data matters so much. So I used to
yeah.
make like these insane spreadsheets and these documents that were like 20 pages long, and then I'd show it to the CEO or the CMO, and they'd be like, "Kirk, what the heck are you doing?" And I'd be like, "What? Don't you want to nerd out about this with me?" And they'd be like, "No, I don't have time to read your novel." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So a lesson learned the hard way. So when I approach data now, the thing that I try to do is make it really visual, really, really visual. I have graphs, I have arrows, I have pie charts. That to me is like I have found to be the easiest way to get people to believe in the data, understand it.
I love that. That happened to me with a client not too long ago where I'm sitting there and it's like I've got this beautiful spreadsheet and I'm sitting there and I'm doing like a something like this. I'm recording him a video, I'm walking him through all of it. And he said, dude, just tell me what went well, what didn't go well, and what are we doing? And I went, no, all my numbers just going out the
Yeah,
window.
yeah. It's the hardest thing in the world because it does force you to understand the numbers, and it does make yourself ask yourself before you pitch to anybody and tell anybody like, is that math actually mathing? Can I go in there and talk to the
Yeah.
CMO and be like, this is what happened and why?
Yeah. And I think that it's actually pretty interesting because for me personally, I own a consultancy and we usually work with e-commerce brands between $5 and $25 million. We've worked with smaller ones, we worked with some bigger ones. But what's interesting to me is it's like almost the same way where somebody will be really creative or an artist or whatever it may be. They get so wrapped up in the art of it that they lose. It's like just talk like a normal person. Like what did this thing do? What could it do better? And how are you going to make it better?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm interested to hear since because I have your LinkedIn pulled up, and one of the things you did is manage and optimize 2 million in ad spend on LinkedIn ads. LinkedIn ads is something I haven't really delved too much into. So I would love to hear from you with LinkedIn ads. What does that look like for somebody who would that be good for? Because is that good for mainly people who are similar to me? Like we have a consultancy. We also have some different things with agencies that we've worked with in the past. Or is this even something that an e-commerce brand could use?
Yeah, that's a
What's your
great
thoughts?
question. I think step number one, Google, whoever's listening, just Google, be like, is my target audience on LinkedIn? Or just be like, what type of people use LinkedIn? I read an
Yeah,
article not that long ago that said there's over 67 million companies on LinkedIn. So odds
wow.
are probably some shape or form your target audience might be on there, and there might be an opportunity to do ads on there. That's number one. Number two, what are you going to actually market on LinkedIn? If you go on LinkedIn for the most part, it's kind of boring. It's kind of like, hey, I
Oh,
started this
facts.
new job, I left this new job. Um, but for the most part, there's not like a lot of persona. There's not like a lot of brand marketing. And brand marketing just means like just having a voice. So something I
Yep.
highly recommend if you're listening to this, and you're thinking about LinkedIn, come out with some videos. Come out with some really fun visuals, videos, things that really give your brand a voice. Next thing to think about is your audience targeting. Like it all goes back to that. So whether you're doing marketing on LinkedIn or Meta or Reddit or X or CTV, number one thing you need to understand is who is your audience. So think right time, right content, right message. If you know who your audience is, what's great about LinkedIn is right now they're still the king of saying like, okay, I want to go after the CMOs of everybody in tech who likes baseball. I mean, you can get pretty specific on this. Uh, and that's just really, really like that stretches your dollar, whether you have like $1 billion to spend or only a couple bucks. So really understanding your target audience before doing ads, you'll be gold.
Yeah. So for someone who wants to, Because I think the way, and you can 100% correct me if I'm wrong with this mindset. Again, with the frame that LinkedIn ads, not really something I've ever done. I've dabbled with it, like literally spent $100 on it. And so for me, when I think about finding the correct persona when it comes to LinkedIn versus meta ads, those may be different personas. Or how do you see that? Do you think that it could be the same persona, or is those two separate things?
I think the thing to remember about is like our audiences when we're marketing to them, they don't even realize they're
Mm-hmm.
personas. They're just people. They're
Yeah.
on Instagram, they're
Yep.
on LinkedIn. They have no idea. So one thing you could do, and one thing that I've done in the past is use tools like Clarity. Microsoft Clarity has a
Mm-hmm.
heat map tool. You can record your data,
Yep.
and you can see the customer flows. You can see who's coming to your website, and there might be a case there where you're like, oh wow, there's some traffic coming from LinkedIn that goes to my site. But take it up a level, and you can create these reports to say like, okay, how deep did they go into my website? So you might find that your LinkedIn traffic is looking at 3 pages on average, and Meta is looking at 7 pages. Well, then in that case, yeah, spend the money with Meta. They seem to be more engaged with your content. But you might also be surprised and be like, wow, on LinkedIn, they just absorb more content. They're more interested in what I'm doing. So follow the
So
data.
how do you? Yeah, yeah. So when it comes to following the data, when you're helping somebody look at, let's say you're working with a company and you're helping them look at their data and optimize that, is how do you help them understand it's like, hey, it's a 45-year-old female that is the ones that are really taking action. It's not where you're spending all your marketing budget. How do you help somebody navigate that?
First, I think the biggest thing that I always try to tell myself, and when I meet with like clients or at the job or anything, is try to
Yeah.
understand before being try to understand before being understood. So have the
Mm.
conversation with whoever that person is, that client is, and be like, who is your target audience? Let them say who they think their target audience is, because not all the time it actually is that. Next thing
Yep.
is try to understand what the competitors are doing, what space they're in. That might give you some insights to be like, hey, there's an opportunity here. And then the final thing is look at the actual data. Odds are they've done email marketing. Odds are they've done ads already. Odds are they're producing content regularly. Odds are they have Google Analytics on their website. Take some time to actually go through that and understand it. And don't just look at vanity metrics like, oh, this blog got a thousand views. Look at how long people stayed on the blog. Understand the scroll rate. Understand where people are navigating. Help that paint a picture for what to do next and what to recommend.
That makes sense. So, Kirk, how did you even get into the space? How did you end up in marketing?
Oh, wow. So I went to school for screenwriting, and I went
Okay.
to Long Beach, Cal State Long Beach. My dream was to be a writer, write movies, studied that. And then when college was ending, I sold this indie script that never got produced, sold it for like $2,000. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm set for life. This is it. And all of my friends were like, okay, we're going to go do PA jobs. We're going to work at this studio. We're going to do that. Are you going to come? And I was like, no, why would I ever do that? I'm a writer. I'm a storyteller. Why would I
Hmm.
waste time being a gopher? That doesn't make any sense. Um, might have been the smartest and stupidest thing I ever did going out of college. So smart because during that time, all I did was write. Every day, wake up at 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., just write, 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 create content, create content, create content. Stupid because it would be a very, very long time before I got paid again for writing. And ultimately, I was in this position where I was still living at home, and I was like, I need to get a job. This is getting ridiculous. People are starting to question who I am and if I ever go outside. So I found an agency job where it was copywriting. Company was called Biz Name Wiz. It was such a cool idea where they had customers come and they needed business name ideas. They needed ideas for game characters, ideas, names for products. And I was like, yeah, I could totally do this. And that's what started me into marketing. So worked there for a while, then jumped around to a few different agencies. Ultimately, after meeting so many people around the world, I was like, I'm going to start my own ad agency. So I ran an ad agency for about 5 years, had clients all over the world. And then on one night, what I always tell people is I had my wife, who was my fiance at the time, client called me Friday night, super pissed off. The story's pretty crazy. I don't think he's going to mind if I tell everybody here, but basically what happened was he did not give me access to his server. And
Mm.
there were changes, and I kept telling him, like, hey, need access to your server, need access to your server. Long story short, server goes down, and I had a backup of his site. And I had developers all over the world. I had a developer in Russia, and I was like, hey, this guy is calling me. He thinks he's losing millions of dollars a minute. Help me get this site back online. So the developer says, okay, done. The site's back online. So I tell the customer, hey, great news. You're back, but the website's in Russia. You need to give me access to your server so we can fix this the right way. Well, this guy like chewed me out. He just let me know like, how could you do this? How could you put it in Russia? And I was like, I don't think anybody's gonna know where your site's based. That'd be kind of
Yeah.
weird. Uh, but you're back online. And so at the end of that conversation, him and I were like laughing because it was just so absurd why he was angry. Like, no one's gonna Google where your site's hosted. Yes, it's not ideal for the situation, but you're live. You're worried about making the millions. Well, now's an opportunity to make it. I hang up that call. I talk to my wife, and my wife says, or my fiance at the time, she says, is it always going to be like this? And then that just hit home, and I was like, maybe it's time to cash in. And then from there, I was like, I want to do 9 to 5. I don't want to work Friday nights anymore. It's time, hang up the cape, let somebody else do it.
Wow. So what has that been like? Because you're one of the first people I've talked to kind of go from the 9 to 5 life, being a business owner, did it for a pretty good amount of time, made some good money, and then decided to go back to the 9 to 5 life. What has that been like doing that for this other company?
It was really, really humbling. I remember
Mm.
like first job as a teenager, just thinking like, man, my manager is a real dummy. Doesn't know what he's
Yep.
doing. I remember the first agency jobs I had. I worked for some good agencies. I worked for some bad ones, and I'm like, God, this guy's terrible. This isn't something I want to be associated with. You'll never find it on my LinkedIn like those companies. Um, and then having your own ad agency, having your own business, having it be yours, taking the call at Friday night, you start to appreciate the decisions that are made. You start to understand, like, oh, this is why they did this. This is why they acted like this. This is why it was always about the bottom line, the revenue, the money. This is why they were so focused on that. At the time, I wasn't mature enough to understand. I didn't have appreciation for it. Didn't get it. So going back and doing like the 9 to 5 life, one of the biggest things in my mind was like, okay, well, I pride myself in following the data, being creative, but also what's given me the edge is understanding that this is business. At the end of the day, I can show them this crazy cool video or this awesome SEO tactic or this ad. But at the end of the day, everyone wants to know, hey, did this drive revenue or did it accelerate pipeline? So everything I
Hmm.
try to do marketing wise is try to frame it like, am I getting a yes on both of those? And if I'm not, I need to go back to the drawing board and make sure that they see that value.
That's really cool. So you basically have gone from an entrepreneur to an entrepreneur. And I don't know if you've ever heard that term. You ever heard that term, entrepreneur?
No, I never heard that before.
Entrepreneur is pretty fun. So there's like my wife. My wife and I have built a couple different e-commerce stores. Both of them went over 7 figures in their first 12 months individually. And the thing that's really fascinating, the reason why that was able to happen is my wife is actually a great entrepreneur. So for her, is she enjoys building systems, but she also enjoys just operating inside of a system already running. She doesn't necessarily want to build all those things and have to figure out all the pieces and take the calls late at night and do all those things. So I mean, it sounds very similar to you. Like right now, she's actually in the middle of this internship with this pretty big company, so she can learn the inner workings of these different systems because that's what she wants, and that's even the challenge that she's given to me is, hey, when I come back home, because she's going to come back into the business, she's like, I want systems ready. You just plug me in. And I'm just like, oh shoot, and I've been working on this for the past 2 months. But I just think it's because what's cool, and it's cool with your story, is you're able to take everything that you've learned over the course of your life, and then you're able to sit there and inside of somebody else's structure is you get to play and you get to have fun. You get to be entrepreneur minded. Just like you said, you got those two questions that you're viewing everything through. You've got this lens and that keeps everything in perspective. So it makes you really powerful. And it's really cool that that company is able to come in and swoop you up because it's going to make their lives way easier.
Thank you. And it's fun. Another North Star for me is trying to do things that are fun. You know, we
Yeah.
do marketing, you and I, and it's like when you talk to so many people at work, it's like, this feels like work. Why aren't you happy? Why aren't you enjoying it? Why aren't you learning from it? Why aren't you having some fun? You know,
Yeah.
so
So how do you
important.
keep I think that's a great thing. That's a great question because I know there's so many people that listen to this podcast that maybe they're how you were with the agency, where it's just head down. They're taking calls at 9, 10 o'clock at night. They're getting woke up in the middle of the night. There's some people I know personally that this is happening to, and they're feeling pretty burnt. I wouldn't say they feel burned out because they're passionate about what they do, but they were feeling burnt to the point it's like, hey man, this sucks. I don't enjoy doing this every day. Like, what kind of advice would you give someone like that to just find fun, to remain fun inside of that?
One thing I would remind everybody is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. What does that mean? That means
Mm,
give yourself permission to fail. A lot of times we get burned out because it's like we have to be the best. We got to do this 24/7. We got to be number one. And you forget, there is no right or wrong way generally to do these things with marketing. You kind of just experiment and then you follow the data and you're like, okay, let's scale that. So remind yourself that there's 1,000 different ways to tell this story. Go back to the basics. Have fun being like, I'm going to try this thing. I don't think it has legs, but I'm just going to do it just to fall in love again with the process and see where it goes. And I'll tell you what, if it fails, which honestly, everybody who's listening, I kind of hope it does fail for you, you're going to learn so much from it failing than if it's a success. Like if you just think about
facts.
life in general, I haven't learned much from doing things well, but the times that I failed, man, I've learned life lessons. So definitely open the door for that. Go back to why did you want to be in marketing? It wasn't yes, it's I want some monies, I want to create, but it's also that I want to create, I want to do something bigger, I want to have fun.
That's good. I like that. And I do agree. I think that failure gets a really bad connotation. It's just the way that it's been framed. When realistically, it's either you win or you learn. And I think that it's if you can truly view it like that, then you're going to take more risks because there's no risk involved. You either win or you learn. And realistically, to your point, especially if you haven't quote unquote failed before, you haven't failed early and often, you need to go fail some more because if all you do is succeed, then you're really thinking too small. You're playing it way too safe. This is real for us, is where with the second brand that my wife and I created, it went from zero to over seven figures. And when that happened, it did it so quickly that there was not really much failure that went into that. There was no iterations that had to happen. We had great product market fit right out the gate. It basically everything just lined up. And then all of a sudden, when things got hard, we didn't know what to do. And we had to start figuring out different tactics and all these different things. We had to come up with new product ranges and a lot of things now. This was years and years ago that now that I consult with all these other brands, it's like, oh shoot, we probably it's like if it would have taken longer to get to seven figures bootstrapped, it would have been much better for us because we would have understood who our actual customer was. We would have understood different ways to market and not just been one sales channel focus. We would have been able to diversify inside of one vertical. There would have been a lot of different things we would have been able to accomplish. But instead, because it came so easy, we had to learn the hard way. And then rebuilding things over the past 5 years, it's like, oh shoot, this is what it actually feels like to be a business owner, to actually have to go figure out what a product market fit is, to actually figure out your pricing, and people aren't just immediately like, yeah, I'll take everything you got. And it's honestly, in the beginning, it was a hard place to be. And then now it's a fun place to be. This is exactly what you were saying, is even this week, is last week was awful. And it was just one of the hardest weeks in business I've had in a long time. And so I was talking to my wife about it over the weekend. It's like, how can I just have fun again? And so I just took yesterday off and I just spent time. It's like, how would this be fun for me again? And I just listed it out and I just spent time and I just made it fun because at the end of the day, there's not one way to become successful. And also you got to define, what does success even mean, right? Because if you're
Right.
trying to be Elon Musk, then yeah, maybe you got to put in a lot more hours than what I'm putting in. It's like, but at the same time, what is your definition of success? If it's to live a good life and enjoy time with your family and make enough money where you cover all the costs and maybe you can take some vacations, then do that. You don't have to make 100 million, $1 billion a year, and if you do that, you can build the life that you want. But I think that people just get so wrapped up in metrics that sometimes they get so wrapped up in data that they miss the human aspect of it.
Yeah, that's 1,000% true. 1,000% true.
So how do you help people? Because you said this, I love this that you said in your LinkedIn, was even though you are a data driven guy, same as me, is being able to see the humans inside of the data. How do you do that?
I think it goes back to, film school, screenwriting and telling a story. That's always served me so well anywhere I've gone in my career. Is not just being like, here's a spreadsheet with a bunch of numbers. Here's the story about a
Mm,
customer and the funnel that they're taking. And hey, CMO, CEO, what if we did this? What would that part of the story look like? How would that impact your business? And just kind of create this experience of like, this could be a whoa type experience that would be fun and would also drive some revenue.
That's cool. I think that because I've worked inside of bigger corporate structures, and there's a lot of times where they don't focus as much on the humans as much as they do the data. And so they'll say,
Right.
well, this person, because I was over supply chain logistics for a Fortune 500 company in one of their locations. And it was really interesting for me to see how basically the people who are in the C suite would treat that, where they would just say, hey, you have this much headcount, you have this much overhead, you need to be doing X, Y, and Z. It's like, you need to come to the location because you don't understand that there's a wall right there that keeps us from being that efficient. It's like our efficiency rating can't be up where you want it to be because of these reasons. If you showed up, you would understand that this is the problems. And I think that it's really cool to hear you say it's like there's fun experiences that people can view the marketing in a way where you're looking at it through the customer's eyes, not even necessarily through just what the brand themselves want to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's neat. That's really cool. So, what has been? Tell me some of your favorite stories, some of your favorite experiences in marketing. Like, tell me some of your favorite stories that you've run into.
Oh, wow. I'll tell you one about a leadership that comes to mind. And this one was fun because I reflect about it a lot when I talk to people who are like, hey, I want to be a director, I want to be CMO, I want to run my own business. So when I left my ad agency, got a 9 to 5 job, met with the CEO, and the CEO day one was like, I don't know if you need everybody on this team. And I was
Hmm.
like, oh shoot, this is day one. This is day one, conversation one, hour one. And I remember having that conversation and being like, okay, I just left my agency life where I was, what I say goes. And now here I am, and it's like, okay, well now I want that 401k, I want that dental. I can't blow it. And just having that conversation with the CEO going, I hear what you're saying, but give me a minute to understand everybody. I ended up leaving that company. No one got fired. Everyone excelled. The people that he was referencing at the company, he ended up saying like when I left, wow, you turned these people around. They're a star now. We love them. And all I did was give them an opportunity to shine. I remember we worked on these
Hmm.
projects and I was like, I'm already the boss. I don't need more of the clouts. I need to find a way to lift you up because you're in there doing the work. So
Yeah.
let's have you actually present to the CEO. Let's have you present to the leadership team. Let's have you come with the ideas. Let's have you take all the glory. And if they hate anything that you do, you can blame it on me. And that built so much trust with the team. I think about that a lot when it comes to like leadership. What type of leader are you? Are you lifting people up? Are you helping them? Are you giving them opportunity to grow? That's one example. In terms of like campaigns and like marketing, something else that comes to mind is okay, experimentation. I think so. We just talked about failure, right? And you got to embrace
Yeah.
failure. That might be scary for some people to hear. Like, I don't want to fail. Well, here's a secret. Call it experimentation, and then you'll never be scared about it. And
Hmm.
I really, really believe you got to be doing that all the time. And there's different things you can experiment with, right? So when it comes to ads, you can experiment with copy, you can experiment with imagery, you can experiment with the landing page, and then there's more advanced stuff. For example, a campaign that I ran at Skydio was, hey, let's onboard this tool called Mutiny. Mutiny is a personalization tool that connects to your tech stack, and it identifies not 100%, but identifies who's coming to your site. Well, let's run an experiment where we take the homepage and we divide it and we say, hey, we know that you're law enforcement. We want to direct you over here and speak your language. And like those type of things, it's a risk because it might fail. It didn't fail. What we found is that the more specific you are, the more you speak their language, the more you show their visuals, the higher the conversions, the more engagement.
Hmm.
But it also would have been cool if it did fail a little bit to be like, oh, well, that was a mistake. Yeah. But things like that, you just have an idea and just run with it, play with it, introduce new things, look at new tools. Another tool that I introduced that I think e-commerce listeners might be interested in is Mountain. Mountain's a CTV tool, so you buy ad space on
Mm.
streaming networks like HBO, Paramount.
Yeah.
They're doing some really interesting stuff. LinkedIn has this feature too. You can run CTV ads. But that was another one where at Skydio, people weren't really sure about this idea of doing, we're going to do CTV. What are you talking about? And the way that I got it across the finish line was actually I put the code on the website during the holidays when everyone was going on vacation, and I sent a message to a lead developer going, "Hey, just so you know, I put this code on the site. I'll see you next year." And come back from break, and I knew what I did was wrong. I knew I was going to get my hand slapped, but I knew it was the right call. I knew if I could just get this tool on the site, get some data, and show people that they would see the light. And sure enough, come back, developer, awesome guy, super smart. He held me to be accountable. I was like, "Why did you do that, dude?" Or you disappeared when on break. But he didn't take the code off. He was like, he rolled with me and was like, "Okay, you have an idea, let's try it." And what's cool about Mountain is, again, you make these videos, you do 15, 30-second ads, and they're on these streaming networks, and it's another way to get your brand out there. It's really cost efficient. I'm not an affiliate, though if Mountain wants to pay me
Yeah.
$1 million for talking about them, I will totally accept it. But it's a cool tool to check out, just another way to get your brand, your product out there.
That's sick. I've never heard of Mountain, but I have heard of those different kind of ad spaces. And I've always wondered, it's like, okay, what does that actually look like? How do you do that? So that's a great thing. I'm going to check that out because, again, not only do we work with a bunch of brands that are big enough where that would be effective for them, but we're also in the discussions. We're actually in discussions right now to either buy a brand or start our own, leaning more heavily into starting our own again. But with all that said, something that you talked about that I want to hit on is your leadership. Leadership, I think, is something that gets overlooked a lot because we can sit here and talk about your marketing expertise and your genius and how that looks and data and all that, but leadership is so integral. And I love the way that you talked about leading people because that's exactly how I lead people. Quick backstory: I was talking about the location that I was over, and so the way I got that location, I was one of the youngest managers in this Fortune 500 company, and that I had no degree, I had no network when I started. I was literally basically right above a janitor when I first started there, and I flew up the ranks really, really fast. And I was 24, took over my own location, and the way that that happened was there's a place that was just on fire. It was literally the epitome of a dumpster fire. And they said, "Hey, so we have this position. Do you want this?" And I went, "Yeah, this is exactly what I want." And then I got into it and didn't realize it was an actual dumpster fire. But what was crazy is doing something similar to even what you were talking about was within my first 90 days, we went from the worst location in all of Texas to second best in 90 days. So the reason why was I did exactly what you did. And I just went and I talked to every single person, figured out what did they like about the job? What did they hate? I was out there the entire time with them, just walking around, spending time with these people. And I wanted to understand, it's like, what am I not seeing? Now, what are some of the things that I need to know coming into this? And then I just basically I conglomerated as much data as possible, identified the biggest levers. It's like, okay, here's the things that are holding these people back. And then I just axed all those. And then immediately they felt heard and seen. And then similar to you, it's like, it's like I'm already a manager. I don't have to get more clout, which is crazy to me. There's so many people who they will be a manager and then you will sit there and work for them and you'll do all these things and all these tasks and you're making them look great. And they'll be like, "Yeah, I did that." It's like, you didn't do any of that. I did all that. It's like, but if you made me look better, what happens is you look better. And I just realized if I could work through my team, that inherently I would look better too. So every time that somebody, and I still do this with our teams in the business, with any of our volunteer teams, all of it, is if somebody does it and they say, "Wow, Steven, it's incredible you did that." It's like, I didn't do it. That person did it. And it's like, because I just want to point direction and give credit where credit is due. Because if I'm leading the initiative, it's still going to flow up to me anyways. So I just think that mentality of helping elevate other people is just the rising tide raises all ships. So as you're raising those ships, you get raised up as well. So I love that. And I just wanted to hit on that because I don't want anyone to miss that you did that, because not very many people, there's a small sliver of people who are leaders that will do that for other people.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's also too, at some point things will go south again. At some point there
Yep.
will be like a fire. The CEO, CMO, a customer will call and be like, "What the heck are you doing?" And the reality is, if you're a good leader, you know when to lead and when to take a step back. And there's going to be a point where if you really have your team's back, you're really there for them, you're really elevating them, you're really helping them, you don't have to worry about those fires. You know that they're going to go to bat for you. You know that, the Friday nights are going to be like, "Hey, I saw this, took care of it, don't worry about it." And there's that trust. That's the spot you want to be in. You want to play. The way I think about it is you want to play tennis. Handball is fun, but tennis is better. You want to have
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I like that. That's funny. So, Kurt, I've really enjoyed our time together. For everyone listening, I'm sure they have too. Been some great nuggets to take away from this. Where can they get more of you?
So two different places you can find me. One is LinkedIn, Kirk Deis, Deis. I post there a lot. And another one is I just launched a website called heydigitaldoc.com. And I got a bunch of free Chrome apps that I built there for marketers who are in the ad space. Also got a bunch of templates. And I just launched a little podcast thingy too.
Hey, let's go podcast. All
There we
right, send me
go.
all that stuff. I'll make sure it gets in the description because I want people. The heart behind this podcast, I've been on hundreds, is being a guest. Is you get to show up, you get to spend time with me, and it's great. But I want to also highlight you, like you've taken time out of your day and given that to me and to our listeners. So I want to make sure that you are the expert that you are, that you're seen in that light. So I make sure that everything is crafted so that way people can find you and you actually get real engagement. It's not just fictitious. So I want to thank you again for being here. Again, congratulations on the podcast and the website launch. Let's go. That's sick. And yeah, man,
Thank
it's
you.
been a great time. Thank you for hanging out with me, man.
Thanks for having me. This was awesome.
All right, everyone. I will talk to you guys in the next episode.